This one uses the camera tracking. So I'm going to select that, do a quick camera track on it. It'll take a minute, just working behind the scenes. You can actually work away while this is analyzing. It's not going to hijack the interface. You can have something analyzing for 10 minutes and do a bit of work in a different composition, or in that composition, in fact. It's a behind the scenes kind of process. This is a relatively short clip though, so it only takes a moment. Okay. That's giving me less than the last time, but I should still get something to work with. I do. Okay. Right, so this again is giving me 3 points that can describe that plane of the projector screen. So I'm going to just do a bit of work on the target size there just to test it out, and that's looking okay. So you can see how you can test the plane, see how effective it is in matching up with that projector screen. And then I'm going to attach a shadow catcher camera and light. Now, straight away you get a light, you get a shadow catcher, and you get a camera. Now, this light isn't modified in the same sense as if you were kind of setting it up the way I did before, where I just kind of dragged it around. I mean, you could. It's extremely tricky. I'll show you a probably more straightforward way of using this light in conjunction with this shadow catcher. So the shadow catcher, you'll see, is fairly well tracked. You can barely see it. It's just around there, but it is going to need to be modified. Again, a lot of the time, the analysis really doesn't kind of perfectly match things. You have to go back and play around, but that's actually not too bad. I just needed to scale it and rotate it slightly. So you can see that that's perfectly matched now to the projector screen. And that's going to catch my shadow. The light is kind of sitting there doing its own thing. It makes an assumption on where that light should be, but it's generally not accurate. And the camera is doing the moving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back my camera tracker and find that same set of points. I think it was around these three. Yeah. And create a piece of text. So I'm going back to my camera tracker, finding the plane, and now I'm going to put something else on that plane, a piece of text. Again, the text isn't perfect, so I need to do a bit of work on that. Select the text, scale it down first of all, and I'll need to rotate that around its x-axis just to bring it in a little bit more in line, and then it's kind of doing its thing. But you can see the shadows way off there. It doesn't really look convincing because it's kind of going off very slowly to the left. You can hold down shift to drag faster, but you can see it's not really doing what I want it to do. So I kind of know now that this is the point where the text intersects with the shadow plane, so this is where I want to size my text so that it looks right on screen. I'm going to change the color to white just so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, well, the light is actually you can't really see it terribly well, but that's to do with the light options, which I'll change now in a moment. So it's a point light, cast shadows, shadow darkness. That I'll come back and change that in a moment. So what I want to do is change it so that when the text is out, whoops, that's my shadow catcher, I don't want that. When my text is out around here, I want it to kind of cast a natural shadow down the front of this. So the text is in the right place, the shadow catcher is in the right place, so I know it's the light that needs to be moved. Now, rather than go looking for the light, trying to find it, I'm going to access it through its properties here, the position property, and I'm just going to use these guys to adjust where that light is based on where that shadow is falling. So this is allowing me to kind of place the light almost retrospectively onto that screen. Okay, so text and object are fairly well lined up now. So I can go back now and change the quality of the shadow. It's way too dark, it's way too hard, so I just soften that. Click OK. That's fine. So I can animate that now if I want. I can pull it in, pull it out, and it's going to look natural as it does that. But what happens when it gets out here? It's cut off here. The shadow catcher ends here, so I don't get any shadow falling down the wall. So what I need to do is I need to create another shadow catcher, and that shadow catcher is going to be placed along this wall. So rather than try and attach a new shadow catcher, the easiest thing to do in this case is to duplicate my initial catcher and pretty much use my see there, it's actually catching the shadow in a very different way, and use my eye to kind of gauge where this needs to be, and you'll see that it'll catch that shadow at certain points. No, it seems I've lost it there now. There we are. So it's a little bit tricky, but you should kind of eventually be able to somehow match up the angle and the position of that second shadow catcher in such a way that when the text now moves, it's going to kind of hit that shadow catcher as if all of these shadow catchers were simply the wall, the projector screen, and so on. Then you'll hit points like the monitor screen here where that simply doesn't work. Then you have to use your masks, for example, to rotoscope that area there, for instance. So if I select my shadow catcher, the mask can be used just like anything else to cut off certain areas such as that, and set it to subtract so that it actually it cuts into that shadow. So this is no different to masks and rotoscoping that you've looked at before. Change that to subtract, and you'll see that it stopped. Now that's not an exact mask by any means, but it should stop the text from casting a shadow down over. You see the hard edge there, that doesn't work terribly well. So the shadow catcher is simply it's basically a solid, and the solid has its material options has that accepts shadows only set. So if I was to change that to off or on, you'll see that it actually turns into that grey solid that you get by default when you create a new solid. Same as this one, it's just a color solid with material options set to accept shadows only. Okay, so there's nothing really that kind of amazing about shadow catchers. All they are solids with their color switched off, and are only able to take the shadow being cast on them by a particular light. Now I can pretty much surmise by looking at the animation of my text and where the shadows fall that I have accurately moved my point light somewhere up here. Okay, and I've done that, as I say, through the properties there. So as you're moving things around now in 3D space, casting shadows in various directions, then you're just going to be setting up camera or shadow catchers or shadow planes to map across things, and that's how you get that kind of realistic integration of light object into your scene.